Reporting from the 2024 Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, I'm Kira Phillips. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
This morning on World News Now, 20 days to go and the presidential candidates are trying to fire up key voting blocks. What Kamala Harris says about critiques that she's very scripted and what Donald Trump said as experts predict his plans would add trillions more to the national debt.
Misery in the storm zone with dozens still unaccounted for in North Carolina and neighbors still waterlogged in Florida.
More than 100 Jewish passengers told they could not board a flight. How much that airline has now been fined.
Funny business just ahead of Halloween, but the Highway Patrol was not laughing.
In the skinny, Taylor Swift's newest project, plus Cher turns the Victoria's Secret fashion show into a disco dance floor. It's Wednesday, October 16th.
From ABC News, this is World News Now.
Good Wednesday morning, everyone. Cher is back on the runway, too, as is the Victoria's Secret fashion show.
It's been 6 years. I covered it many years ago. It's a fun night, but it's been 6 years since they've had the show, and huge stars showed up for last night. Can't wait to show you all the highlights of that. And you know what? I've been thinking, we do not talk enough about Taylor Swift.
I know. We're going to have her on this show, and we apologize to all the Swifties out there for not talking about her. It's only been 4 out of the last 5 days.
I was going to say,
so
I think we missed yesterday. So
for that.
But
she's always making news.
She's always making news.
She's got a new project. She's going to Yankee games. She's dating.
That's right. We did talk about her
Travis
last night.
Kelce. That's right. All right, we'll have all of that and more coming up. But first, we're going to begin with the countdown to Election Day as both candidates focus on shoring up support from critical voting blocks.
Yeah, it's less than 3 weeks away now. Vice President Kamala Harris turned her attention to black men during a visit to Detroit, sitting down with radio host Charlemagne the God. And former President Trump taped a Fox News town hall with an all-female audience and declared himself the father of IVF.
The event took place in Georgia, where the first day of early voting shattered records, with more than 300,000 people casting their ballots. Here's ABC's Rachel Scott.
In battleground Georgia, records shattered. The first day of early voting in the make-or-break state, bringing people to the polls. State officials calling turnout, quote, spectacular.
It looks like this is going to be a record breaker for the first day of early voting.
Former President Donald Trump, who lost Georgia by just over 11,000 votes in 2020, traveling here to make his case.
Thank you very much.
Earlier, Trump appearing at a meeting of the Economic Club of Chicago.
If you add up all the promises you've made, and your plans would add $7.5 trillion to the debt. Why should they trust you with that?
Because we're about growth. She's got no growth whatsoever, and we're all about growth.
The former president also pressed about whether there would be a peaceful transfer of power this time, after he urged hundreds of supporters to march to the Capitol on January 6th. Trump insisting it was peaceful last time.
You had a peaceful, very peaceful. I left the morning that I was supposed to leave. I went to Florida, and you had a very peaceful transfer.
And Vice President Kamala Harris talking with radio host Charlemagne the God.
One thing they've been saying, a lot of your press hits get criticized. You know, folks say you come off as very scripted. They say you like to stick to your talking points. And some media says you have...
That would be called discipline.
But what do you say to people who say you stay on the talking points?
The reality is that there are certain things that must be repeated to ensure that I have everyone know what I stand for and the issues that I think are at stake in this election.
Acknowledging the pressure she feels and the question she asks herself every night.
I almost every night, in addition to my prayers, will ask, have I done everything I could do today? This is a margin of error race. It's tight. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. But it's tight.
More than 250,000 people voted early on the first day of early voting. Those numbers shattering records. Former President Donald Trump was in this state. Vice President Kamala Harris in Michigan. Both these candidates on a blitz through the battleground states that will ultimately decide this election with just about 3 weeks to go. Rachel Scott, ABC News, Cobb County, Georgia.
All right, Rachel, thank you for that. Harris is in Pennsylvania today to do a Fox News interview that will air tonight. And some prominent Republicans are expected to join her on the campaign trail. Trump's Fox town hall with women voters will air today as well, and he's also doing a town hall with Univision.
Nearly 3 weeks after Hurricane Helene devastated western North Carolina, state officials say at least 92 people remain unaccounted for. There is a task force now to find those people, and FEMA staffers have resumed going door to door in efforts to help residents. They paused briefly last weekend amid the arrest of a man for allegedly threatening to harm FEMA workers.
We are not going anywhere. Misinformation will not deter us from our mission of helping people, period.
North Carolina's governor says there's still a dangerous flow of misinformation about recovery efforts. Excuse me. He's calling on those responsible to stop it. In Florida, the scope of the cleanup needed after Hurricanes Helene and Milton is becoming more clear. FEMA says more than $200 million has already been allocated to victims of Milton alone.
Well, the U.S. has issued a deadline to Israel stemming from the war in the Middle East. The Biden administration is demanding that Israel increase the flow of humanitarian aid to Gaza in the next 30 days or risk losing future military aid. And they're also calling for more protections for civilians. The State Department says critical aid entering Gaza has dipped to the lowest level since the start of the war.
The German airline Lufthansa is denying allegations of discrimination after it was slapped with a record multi-million-dollar fine. It's accused of unjustly denying boarding to more than 100 Jewish passengers.
What's the rule? So who's allowed on a flight?
Lufthansa Airlines has agreed to pay a $4 million fine after being accused of discriminating against Jewish passengers flying from New York to Germany in 2022. The airline prevented 128 passengers, nearly all wearing Orthodox Jewish clothing, from boarding a flight, blaming their alleged misbehavior, including some refusing to wear a mask, which was policy at the time.
In my adult life, I've never heard of it. If you want to do it like this, Jewish people who wear the mess, who made the problems.
But many of the passengers who were denied boarding did not know each other and were not traveling together. They say they were treated unfairly as a single group. The airline denied any discrimination and said dozens of the passengers were disregarding crew instructions.
Is this a Lufthansa decision that all Jewish people that were on that flight can't go on any flight today? Because this is 2022, and this is a Western country. So this is to go up to upper management? Because this is like anti-Semitism.
The airline said the incident resulted from an unfortunate series of inaccurate communications, misinterpretations, and misjudgments. The U.S. Transportation Department calls this the largest penalty ever issued against an airline for civil rights violations. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg saying no one should face discrimination when they travel, and today's action sends a clear message to the airline industry. Under the agreement, Lufthansa will pay $2 million, and the Transportation Department will credit the airline for $2 million it already paid to the passengers.
Walgreens is closing about 1,200 U.S. locations, including about 500 of them in the next year. The pharmacy chain has been hurt by rising costs, increasing theft, and customers fleeing online. Walgreens did not reveal where the closing stores will be. Rival CVS and Rite Aid have also been closing locations.
Just as long as there have been those high-occupancy vehicle lanes on highways, HOV lanes, drivers have been trying to access them even if they don't meet the requirements.
Yeah, so here's an example, a seasonal one. Yeah, a Halloween skeleton with a Scream mask on was belted into the passenger seat of a car near San Jose, California. And, of course, a California Highway Patrol officer was not fooled, so he pulled the driver over.
It is a serious offense. The minimum penalty for violating California's HOV lane rules is nearly $500. Rhiannon, I have an admission. I have also received a ticket for this. I didn't put a skeleton. I just was driving in the HOV lane.
Why were you driving the HOV lane when
like
you weren't
17.
supposed to?
Also, I didn't realize that that's what HOV stood for until today.
What is it?
High occupancy vehicle lane.
So we don't know.
Creativity,
the driver's
though.
identity has not been released, but it is creative. I mean, you know, guess he thought he was going to get away with it.
I hope he fights the ticket. Okay, coming up, the dramatic rescue of a man lost at sea for nearly 67 days.
Plus, the rock star treatment of 2 giant pandas finally arriving at their new home in the nation's capital. Aren't they so cute? But they're not quite ready for their public debut. We'll tell you why.
And later in the skinny, dedication night on Dancing with the Stars. The celeb who had a breakthrough, and which couple got the boot. You're watching World News Now. A powerful blast destroyed a home outside Washington, D.C. The explosion obliterated a house in Haymarket, Virginia on Tuesday evening. Firefighters were responding to a report of a gas leak at the time of the blast. No one was hurt. Initial reports say a contractor hit a natural gas line.
The search for the person who shot A staffer at a California college has ended with the suspect dead. Police in Santa Monica say Devon Dean died by suicide after being cornered following a car chase on Tuesday. Investigators say Dean shot and wounded a worker at Santa Monica College Monday night. The victim was in critical condition, but police do not know a motive.
An ordeal at sea lasting nearly 10 weeks has ended in eastern Russia. The crew of a fishing vessel rescued a 46-year-old man late Monday who said he'd been floating in an inflatable boat for 67 days. Authorities say he'd set out with his brother and 15-year-old nephew in early August. They'd been adrift with little food and 5 gallons of water. His brother and nephew did not survive. When he was rescued, the man had lost half his body weight and said he had no strength left.
Wow, incredible story there. Thousands of miles to the west, an interesting sight on one of the wonders of the world. Look at this. A paraglider spotted, yes, that is a dog, atop Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza. He said the animal managed to climb all the way up and was barking at birds at the top. The pyramid is the largest in Egypt. It is likely the dog hopefully found its way back down. We don't know for sure, but if he found his way up, hopefully he found his way back down.
Right?
Yeah, look at it. Amazing.
We'll hope for the best.
Yes.
The dog made it. All right, when we come back, Taylor Swift's new project.
And the Victoria's Secret fashion show is back. The Skinny is next.
Reporting from Monterey Park, California, I'm Robin Roberts. Wherever the story is, we're going to take you there. You're streaming ABC News live.
Time now for The Skinny. Danny New joins us as we start with the return of the Victoria's Secret fashion show.
It has been 6 years since we saw a Victoria's Secret fashion show, and the show was held last night here in the Big Apple, and it was headlined by none other than Cher.
Who will be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame later this week. The icon performed her hits Believe, and models walked the runway, including sisters Gigi and Bella Hadid.
Yeah, Ashley Graham made her Victoria's Secret fashion show debut. She said she was excited to wear the angel wings and represent what she called curvy women everywhere by walking the runway. There she is. She looks fantastic.
Kate Moss made a surprise appearance in a sheer black lace dress, and Tyra Banks closed out the show, making her first appearance at the show in nearly 2 decades.
I told you guys, tons of big stars were there last night. It was a big show. It was fun to watch. You know what else was fun to watch? A big night in the ballroom, of course.
Yes, last night was dedication night. What does that mean? Well, the 9 celebs remaining on Dancing with the Stars paid tribute to someone or something that made a difference in their lives.
And former Bachelor Joey made a difference for himself, becoming king of the ballroom with a chart-topping waltz.
And NFL star Dan Amendola dedicated his contemporary dance to his late college football coach, described as a breakthrough by Judge Carrie Ananaba.
Supermodel Brooks Nader turned out a salsa dance with her partner. Guys, we all lived in Miami. We could do this.
How would you describe it, though, Danny?
I'm not reading what's in the prompter.
I lived in Miami. I grew up in South Florida.
You can read it.
I cannot do this.
Rihanna, how was it described? You want to say?
Oh, no thanks.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it was not enough to keep her from getting the boot. Oh, no. Next week, guys, Disney night. You know Disney, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we work there.
I can't wait to see what fun things they write next week on
Hopefully
Disney night.
much more PG. Okay, next, to Taylor Swift announcing 2 new projects.
She's going to suit up for the Kansas City Chiefs.
It's about time.
It is about
Why
time.
not?
She can play slot receiver. Oh, quarterback? Yeah.
She is tall.
Well, no, Mahomes is doing well.
She could be a kicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
We've seen that too.
All right, it's none of
anyone
those
can do that,
things.
right?
Unfortunately, yeah, right? It is none of those things. And we just haven't seen a lot of her, you know? We haven't seen her. We haven't been talking about her. So it is good that she is keeping busy since her Epic Eras tour.
So here's what she's doing. Her new projects, an anthology edition of her tortured poets on both vinyl and CD, as well as a new Eras tour book.
A tour book,
Yes.
Rhiannon.
I know.
For your kids.
But no, my son Roman, this will make a great
Roman would like this.
birthday or Christmas present, yeah.
Well, if you get your kids to read, right? It's 256 pages, promises to include more than 500 images, including behind-the-scenes peeks and Taylor's personal reflections and notes for just $40. Both products will be coming out on Black Friday exclusively at Target.
The problem is things like that sell so quickly, so that's going to be like probably sold out immediately.
I saw on...
And I'm not going to Target on Black Friday.
Right.
Sorry.
I saw online. Our good friend Will Gans was very excited
Yes.
for these announcements as well.
He had multiple videos.
Yes.
That were
he
like
did.
breaking down the book.
I feel like I read it.
Yeah, he'll tell you.
Finally, Harrison Ford is having a big moment right now.
A moment, apparently, of sheer embarrassment, although I don't see why. All right, so the legendary actor recently sat down with GQ to discuss his role in the season 2 of the Apple comedy Shrinking.
But he was asked about this resurfaced photo from 1982, back when he was sporting some shorts. He responded with, quote, "I think I'm going to be ill."
Wow, he looks great.
He always looks good.
Yeah, he does.
Also,
The
this
humidity's
look has
kinda going
returned.
out of that look. Yeah, bring it back.
This is back in. Two new arrivals are now living in America, and their fans could not be more excited.
All, including the fans at this desk. In fact, their arrival in the nation's capital caused quite a bit of pandemonium, didn't it, Danny?
Yeah, and it's really been a roller coaster all over the country this whole year for this exchange program. Zoos have been gaining or losing their pandas in the last 12 months, but now the wait is over at the zoo that started it all.
3,000 screaming teenagers are at New York's Kennedy Airport to greet, you guessed it,
60 years ago, the Beatles touched down in the U.S. for the first time and received a reception historically unrivaled. That is, until Tuesday, when 2 giant pandas arrived from China. Following 19 hours of travel aboard FedEx's Panda Express, crowds lined the streets to greet the VI pandas as they were driven to their new home at the Smithsonian National Zoo.
Was walking by and cried when they left, and now I'm almost going to cry now that there's pandas back at the zoo.
For half a century, pandas had been a huge part of D.C. culture after the first ones arrived from China in 1972. However, their international agreement ended last year and all hope was lost.
Join us. It's official.
Until in May, when First Lady Dr. Jill Biden teamed up with the National Zoo to announce their return. Here you can see the zoo's 2 newest stars react to their stage. 3-year-old Bao Li sniffing his new digs for the first time. And here's Qing Bao, also 3 years old, breaking in her new pool with a yawn we've all given after a long flight. And this all comes amid wild fluctuation in the state of panda availability in the U.S. A few days ago, Zoo Atlanta returned 4 pandas to China after their agreement expired. And in August, the San Diego Zoo received the country's first pandas in over 2 decades. In fact, on Tuesday, they, totally coincidentally, announced the opening of their Panda Cam, so you can check out adorable panda content from coast to coast.
For me, this is like welcoming new neighbors.
But for the patient folks in the nation's capital, they're going to have to wait a little longer as its newest residents undergo a month-long quarantine before their anticipated official public debut in January.
So the pandas are on loan there for 10 years with an annual fee of $1 million to support conservation efforts in China. Up next, San Francisco is the newest city to make a big effort to get some at their zoo. Who knows what'll happen? It's competitive, guys.
It is competitive. And you mentioned in your story they have to be quarantined for 30 days to make sure that they don't have any, that they're healthy, basically. And then they make their debut in January.
That's the plan. And they have 40 new cameras now in the enclosure, so we'll get all the panda footage. I don't know if that means we'll get that before the debut in January. Like, will we get to see that in the meantime? I don't know.
The demand is going to be through the roof for tickets to the zoo, which is a good thing.
This morning on World News Now, early voting gets underway in a battleground state.
People in Georgia lined up and turned out in record numbers on the first day of early voting. Plus, the candidates begin to make closing arguments what Donald Trump says about his tariff plan and Kamala Harris's message to black men.
Also this morning, the search for dozens of people still unaccounted for weeks after Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina. Plus, the image from Hurricane Milton, a dog chained to a fence. Well, someone is now being held accountable for that.
Plus, protesters angry about breakfast cereal, what they're demanding from Kellogg.
And Tom Brady takes on a new role, one that could mean some big changes to his job in the broadcast booth. It's Wednesday, October 16th.
From ABC News, this is World News Now.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Tom Brady has a new gig. He apparently needed some more money or needed something new to do. I don't know.
I think he's the Taylor Swift of the NFL, right? He can do it all.
He can do it all.
The biggest name, the biggest face.
Yeah.
Maybe he actually is not going to play again. I'm now convinced maybe that's the case.
I think it's over.
This Kellogg story is a big one. We've long talked about when you travel to other countries, you notice the food is different.
Yep.
And that's what people are upset about with cereal. So we'll tell you why they were protesting coming up in a little bit. We want to begin this morning, though, with the latest outreach in the race for the White House just 20 days from Election Day.
Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump are making a final push to win over key voters that could put them over the top. Their running mates hit the campaign trail in battleground Pennsylvania. Tim Walz made a pitch to rural voters, and J.D. Vance spoke with conservative moms.
President Biden also made a stop in the Keystone State, saying Trump is a loser in everything he does. All of this as voters in Georgia head to the polls in record numbers. ABC's Lana Moise starts us off.
This morning, a record shattered in Georgia.
Beat the crowd, because it's going to be a big crowd, and you should try to come early if you can.
More than 300,000 votes were cast yesterday in the state's first day of early voting, more than double the number in 2020. Former President Trump in Atlanta blamed immigrants for taking the jobs of Black and Latino workers.
And I'll tell you what, any African American or Hispanic, and you know how well I'm doing there, that votes for Kamala, you got to have your head examined, because they are really screwing you.
Earlier, Trump, speaking to the Economic Club of Chicago, touted his proposed tariffs on imported goods, saying they'll boost U.S. manufacturing and jobs, despite critics saying they'll raise prices for American consumers.
I'm going to put a 100, 200, 2,000% tariff. They're not going to sell one car into the United States.
That is going to push up the cost for all those people who want to buy foreign goods.
Now, what's going to happen?
That is simple mathematics, President Trump.
It's not. Yeah, it is, but not the way you figure it. I was always very good at mathematics.
The Wall Street Journal and other financial experts have questioned Trump's plan. The Nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget estimates Trump's proposals would add an extra $7.5 trillion to the national debt, compared to $3.5 trillion from Harris's plan. Trump, pointing to the low inflation during his first term, said his critics have been wrong before. At a Fox News town hall with women voters last night, border security was a focus, as Trump was asked about the murder of nursing student Laken Riley, allegedly by an undocumented immigrant.
We're going to end all sanctuary cities in the United States, and we're going to go back to normalcy, and we're going to have law and order.
And in a not yet released clip, Trump addressed his recent comment about the military being called in, if necessary, to deal with the enemy from within if there's unrest on Election Day. Trump suggesting he was referring to certain Democrats, saying, "I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations." Harris reacted to Trump's enemy from within comment during an interview with radio host Charlamagne tha God.
Donald Trump has been very clear that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies.
Harris calling Trump unfit for the White House.
It's a sign of weakness that you don't have the courage to stand up for the Constitution of the United States and the principles upon which it stands. This man is weak and he is unfit.
Also touting her economic plan for Black men.
The needs of the Black community are not just about criminal justice. My agenda is about tapping into the ambitions and the aspirations, knowing that folks want to have an opportunity. If they want, they should have a meaningful opportunity to build wealth, including intergenerational wealth.
Harris denied accusations that she targeted Black men when she was a prosecutor, locking up thousands for marijuana charges, now campaigning to legalize it nationwide.
It's just simply not true. And what public defenders who are around those days will tell you, I was the most progressive prosecutor in California on marijuana cases and would not send people to jail for simple possession of weed. And my pledge is, as president, I will work on decriminalizing it, because I know exactly how those laws have been used to disproportionately impact certain populations, and specifically Black men.
Harris is expected to rally with a group of Republican supporters outside of Philadelphia today, and she'll sit down for a Fox News interview. As for Trump, his next rally is in Detroit. Rhiannon, Andrew.
All right, Lionel, thank you for that. Now to Texas, Senator Ted Cruz and Congressman Colin Allred clashed on the debate stage as Cruz fights to keep Allred from becoming the first Democrat elected to statewide office in Texas in 30 years. Cruz attacked Allred on the border, and Allred went after Cruz on the state's restrictive abortion ban. And in Pennsylvania, Democratic Senator Bob Casey faced off against Republican challenger David McCormick, clashing on clean energy, gun laws, and abortion rights. These races could determine which party controls the Senate.
The Biden administration is warning Israel to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza or risk losing future military aid from the U.S. A joint letter from Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin demands to see improvement in the situation in Gaza within 30 days. And ABC's James Longman tells us Israel appears to be taking the advice of the U.S. when it comes to Iran.
This region is bracing itself for Israel's expected attack on Iran. The Biden administration says it's urging restraint.
As for Gaza, the State Department says critical aid has hit the lowest level since the start of the war.
While calling Hurricane Helene a catastrophic disaster, officials in hard-hit North Carolina revealed dozens of people in the state remain unaccounted for. Recovery efforts there and in Florida will continue for a long time. ABC's Victor Oquendo reports.
Nearly 3 weeks after Hurricane Helene ravaged western North Carolina, the governor announcing 92 people are still unaccounted for. And officials are slamming the dangerous misinformation about the federal response.
If you're participating in spreading this stuff, stop it.
FEMA back on the ground, going door to door after temporarily pausing some operations due to threats. Authorities arresting an armed man over the weekend for allegedly threatening FEMA workers.
We are not going anywhere. Misinformation will not deter us from our mission of helping people, period.
And in Florida, the massive cleanup after back-to-back hurricanes.
Here in St. Pete Beach, debris from Hurricanes Helene and Milton piling up, lining both sides of the street.
A rush of water like flowing out.
Andrea DeKnight sharing this video,
draining our house,
showing water pouring out of her home during Helene.
If you looked out the front window, it was just like a lake up to your house.
A long recovery ahead.
It's sad. It's a beautiful neighborhood. I'm sure it will be someday again, but it's hard to see.
There is debris all over St. Pete Beach. Neighbors tell me they don't even know who this boat belongs to. Debris collection, it will likely take weeks, if not months. Victor Oquendo, ABC News, St. Pete Beach, Florida.
Victor, thank you. You may remember the dog that was found by a Florida officer tied to a fence and in water as Hurricane Milton approached. Well, the dog's former owner has been identified and is facing animal cruelty charges. Prosecutors say the 23-year-old claims he was fleeing to Georgia and left the dog behind. He faces up to 5 years in prison. The dog is safe and will be adopted and has been named Trooper.
Yeah, for the state trooper who rescued him. What a nice ending for the dog.
Yeah.
I'm glad he'll be adopted to another family. Tom Brady has a new gig, and this one might put a little bit of a crimp on his current job.
Yeah, so Brady is now a minority stakeholder in the Las Vegas Raiders. I guess that technically makes him an NFL owner. Why not? The deal was approved on Tuesday, among other things. It means the 47-year-old can't play again unless he sells his stake, but that was never going to happen. He's not going to play again, right?
Right. I think he's done.
He's done. He's retired. He's retired.
But it also affects his job as a Fox Sports analyst. Things he can no longer do include watch practices, attend broadcast production meetings, and publicly criticize game officials or other clubs. So what does a minority stakeholder mean exactly? Does that mean he doesn't have any real decision-making power?
Pretty much. That's usually what it means.
He just makes money from
It's a little bit more symbolic, and depending on his contract situation, I don't know. But fun fact, I am also a minority owner of the Green Bay Packers.
What?
Technically, it's a publicly owned team. So back in the early 2000s, I bought a share in the Green Bay Packers.
Nice.
Look at that.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Andrew Dimbert, news reporter and minority.
Kind of.
Coming up, National Dictionary Day and a pop quiz.
Plus, the food fight over at Kellogg. Why hundreds turned out for a protest outside the company's headquarters.
But first, the effort to rescue 3 dogs that fell down a lava tube in Hawaii. You're watching World News Now. We are back now with a remarkable rescue in Hawaii. These 3 dogs you're looking at, they fell down a lava tube while chasing a pig. They had been trapped for 6 hours when an expert arrived. He lowered himself 30 feet into the dark, muddy hole, put the dogs in harnesses, and then had them lifted to safety. Look at that. All of this happened during a small earthquake. The rescuer says, though, he did not feel it, but it appears the dogs are all doing okay.
Well, relatives of Lyle and Eric Menendez are set to hold a news conference today in what they're calling a powerful show of unity. The brothers are serving life in prison for the 1989 murders of their parents. Their attorney wants the Los Angeles County DA to review their sentences. Paul Gascon is examining evidence which may show the brothers were sexually abused by their father. The case has regained prominence due to a new Netflix show about the killings.
Cereal maker Kellogg is facing real backlash over artificial chemicals in its products. Hundreds of activists hit the streets in Michigan to wage a battle over what they call a moral issue. This morning, a food fight over cereal.
Wake up, Kellogg.
About 1,000 people protested outside the Michigan headquarters of Kellogg, demanding the company remove artificial dyes from cereals in the U.S.
I'm here for the mom. All the moms who struggle to feed their children healthy food without added chemicals.
Kellogg, the maker of Fruit Loops and Apple Jacks, announced nearly a decade ago that it would remove artificial colors and ingredients. The company did that in other countries. For example, Fruit Loops in Canada are colored with concentrated carrot juice, watermelon juice, and blueberry juice. But in the U.S., Fruit Loops still contain artificial colors, including red dye number 40, yellow dye number 5, yellow dye number 6, and blue dye number 1. Studies have claimed those dyes could cause behavioral problems in some children. California just last month banned the dyes from food served in public schools.
It is not crazy to expect better for Americans.
In response to the protest in Michigan, Kellogg insisted its products are safe, saying its ingredients meet federal standards. The FDA has said most kids have no adverse effects from color additives. But critics argue the FDA developed its standards without assessing possible neurological effects. Activists say they have gathered 400,000 signatures demanding Kellogg remove those artificial dyes.
Coming up, we're being put to the test on this National Learn a Word Day.
But first, the city that our own Andrew Dimber just visited now has a message for unruly tourists. Is it because of Andrew's visit?
No comment, no comment.
I think it's totally coincidental. Maybe. You're watching World News Now.
Reporting from Santa Fe, New Mexico, I'm Lindsay Davis. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
I think it's a term we both hate for sure, becoming really common all over the world. People going on vacation and then behaving very badly.
It is such a problem in one European city that officials are resorting to somewhat extreme measures, Danny.
Yes, but it makes you wonder, because a few months ago, Andrew had never been to Prague, and you were allowed to go on a bar crawl there. And now it's coming out this week that the Czech capital has decided to ban all bar crawls from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The city's mayor said it wants to discourage tourists who come for, quote, a short time only to get drunk. Andrew, how dare she take a shot at you like that?
I like how you did the B-roll. I was in this. That's the same tower.
Yeah, was it really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to our editors. They're good,
That's
they're good like that.
behaving.
Were you on a bar crawl?
Yes, Andrew. What did you do?
No, not in this picture. I was a tourist behaving properly.
No one ever bar crawled again after this,
I'm not going to give
properly.
Americans a bad name abroad. That was always my goal.
Thank you. It happened in a few weeks that you weren't there afterwards till now. Next, only 2 months after this came in August, Venice banned groups over 25 and all megaphones. Andrew, as an Italian citizen yourself, I know.
Almost.
Almost. You're getting there. Next, can't blame Italy for this one, though. It was only last year that a British tourist was caught carrying his and his lover's name into the Colosseum. On a 2,000-year-old monument, he felt it needed to say Ivan and Haley 23.
He was carving it into the Colosseum?
He carved their names into the Colosseum.
My only question is, when are we going to put these bands in Times Square?